Hello and welcome to Transform, a program where you get to witness firsthand how ordinary people are transformed by extraordinary power, the power of God's amazing grace. I am Peter Raime. Thank you for joining me. On today's program, my guest is Bruce Coleman. Bruce, welcome to Transform.
Well, thank you for having me here today.
Bruce, you started, first of all, as a teacher.
That's correct.
Where was that at?
I did some country schools and then I worked in a Christian school. That was rather interesting because I work with students with intellectual disabilities on that occasion.
And then you went on to work with Reverend Fred Nile and his wife Elaine Nile.
In the New South Wales Parliament House for approximately 5.5 years. And after that into the New South Wales Right to Life for almost 10 years.
And then in 2007 something major happened.
Yes, I set up Choices of Life along with some Christian friends. We felt that's what God would have us to do so that we could keep the message of life going into the schools. That was the main reason.
Now, why Choices of Life?
Choices of Life is an interesting title because in our society today there are many people who would call themselves pro-choice. They use the word choice, but what they really mean is we give people no choice. They don't provide any information, they don't provide anything like that. My goal is to reclaim that word. Like many other words in our society, we need to reclaim that word choice so that we understand that choice means full information, informed choice, so that young people can make good decisions with their life on the basis of good information. Wow.
And with people, most people, they do things because something motivates them. What motivates you?
What motivates me? It's interesting because I look back in history and one of the people that has stood out in my mind very clearly in the last few years is the name William Wilberforce. Around 200 years ago he was elected to the British Parliament about 1790 and he came in and eventually developed a passion for rescuing slaves from slavery. He wanted to do something there and he worked hard, and for over 40 years he put his whole life and energy into changing the laws in Britain and freeing the slaves from what was capturing them and destroying them. He did that and he won. In the end he won, but it was a long, tenacious battle that he had to carry on. And there was no way that he was going to do it just in a few short years. He had to be there for the long haul. There's no doubt about it. And I admire that man. He stands out in history as a hero. At one point, he was called the most hated man in Britain because he was fighting against the powers of the rich people, the bankers, the business people who were making money out of slavery. And that's who he was fighting. He was fighting the big people. And not only was he called the most hated man in Britain, but he was also called the conscience of the nation. Because he was one of his goals was to reform the morals of England. That was what he sought to do, along with this battle against slavery.
And of course he was such a hero that a few years back we had the film Amazing Grace that was all about him.
That's correct.
An
amazing story, and I think it reflects exactly
And William Wilberforce is one of my heroes as well, because John Newton had a great influence on his life.
That's right.
And the song that we sing, Amazing Grace, is actually related to him.
It's all fits together, and it's God's grace that inspired him.
Talking about God's grace, how did you first experience God's grace in your life when you came to know the Lord as your personal Savior? Walk us through that.
I'd like to bring someone else into the picture as well in this that also reflects God's grace, because I think this is important. Because I think about William Wilberforce, and moving on from there, let's think about a man in our own time who reflects what William Wilberforce did 200 years ago. A man who was elected to our New South Wales Parliament.
That's right.
We've already mentioned his name. His name's Reverend Fred Nile, and he was elected over 30 years ago to the New South Wales Parliament. And he was an amazing man, or is an amazing man, because he has been thrown all the brickbats, but he keeps standing, he keeps fighting, and he keeps standing up for those things which are right.
And he is the longest serving Member of Parliament.
That's correct, in New South Wales, and I believe probably Australia. because he's standing up for what's right, and he's representing those Christian values that we should all be standing for. Now, both of these men are members of Parliament. There's no question about that.
Right.
I'm not a member of Parliament.
Right.
But both of them had a motivation, or have a motivation, which is something that motivates me.
Right.
And it's the Word of God.
Right.
But your question was, what is something about my story,
That's right.
about
How did
who
you
I am?
experience the grace of God? Because that would help our viewers to see you and the life, what God did actually work in your life.
I grew up in a Christian family, so it was a wonderful time in the sense that my mum and dad always made sure that we had Bible reading and prayer together around the dinner table at night. I wonder how many people do that today. But we used to do that all the time, and we used to share those things together, and it was always an encouragement. We went to church together. It wasn't mum and dad sending us. We were actually there together. And it was a tremendous time of encouragement and growing up knowing that going to church, being a Christian, was normal. It wasn't something odd, but at some point, and at one point, I had to make that personal decision about whether I was going to commit my life to the Lord Jesus Christ.
Right.
And that was around age 16.
Right.
I did that. I had a lot of tussles on the way through,
Right.
But by the time I came to 16, just before I did my school certificate, and I realised that God had a plan for my life. And I'd known that all along, I guess, but I got to the point where I realised that I had to make that personal decision. And it was that personal decision that then put me on a path that said, I've got a plan for you, I know where I want to take you, I know how I want to use you, and I just had to listen to what God had for me. And I guess that's why I've had some of those changes.
Yes.
I've gone from teaching into the work at Parliament House, into New South Wales Right to Life, now into Choice of Life. God's leading each step of the way.
Yes.
Because I think that's important, that as we put our life in the hands of God,
Yes.
through Jesus Christ, He will take us in a path that we don't always expect.
That's right. And this is where you find that your Christian faith is so foundational now to your life now.
Because it's the motivation. The
Yes.
same as it motivated William Wilberforce to fight on behalf of those who were downtrodden
Right.
and given no humanity in society,
Right.
to Reverend Fred Nile, who stands up and often stands up for those who don't have a voice in society. And he's stood very, very clearly on the rights of the unborn. He has never wavered on that.
Right.
And to me, that says a tremendous amount, because he hasn't wavered, no matter what people say.
Yes.
He knows what's right and he sticks there.
That's right.
What a tremendous, I guess, a hero.
Yes.
What a role model.
Yeah, and he's a hero to many, many people.
And a lot of young people need role models,
Yeah.
don't they?
Yes.
They need someone they can look up to, someone they can respect.
Yes. And you've had first-hand insight and also were influenced by working with him at Parliament House.
That's correct.
So what were some of the highlights of working there?
Oh,
Because you would have formed a lot of your ideas that would have kind of helped you establish where you want to move forward in life.
well, I saw how Fred actually dealt with issues.
Right.
He dealt with issues quite graciously.
Right.
He didn't attack the man, as we
Right.
often see in politics today.
Right.
He attacked the issue.
Right.
Yes, the man might have been linked to that issue,
Right.
but he attacked the issue rather than the man.
Right.
And that's a very important issue, because you see, I'm here talking about choice. I'm not talking about attacking people who I might disagree with,
Right.
but I'm here attacking an issue.
Right. Now, the reason he does that now and he would have done that then is because the Bible is foundational and the basis for his life.
That's
which
correct.
is the same for you. Why would that be? Why would we take the Bible and all these issues that we have, how do we draw the link together?
Because the Bible has the answer to the problem that I'm talking about. It's the value of human life. If we look at what the Bible has to say, there is no doubt that the Bible is very clear about the ultimate value of every human life. And I say every human life,
Right.
from conception. And we'll be talking about that in some future programs that we'll be preparing. if you look at Psalm 139,
Right.
Psalm 139, an amazing chapter in the whole of the Bible that talks about the wonder of who we are. It says we're fearfully and wonderfully made. Now I'd like to add on to that, in the image of God.
Right.
Because if we're fearfully and wonderfully made, wow, what an incredible picture
Right.
of who we are.
Yes.
That God says, hey, you're special. From creation, you are an amazing creation. He's the creator, we're the creation. And he admires his creation and he says, hey, I've made you special. I've made you different from the very point of creation, from the very point of conception.
Right.
Right? Which is the same thing, isn't it? And it's that, and look, in our society, we spend millions of dollars preserving old buildings. That might be a masterpiece, a cathedral or something like that. We spend millions of dollars preserving some of the old masters, the old paintings. But we spend millions of dollars destroying the very creation of God, the masterpiece that God says, hey, this is a masterpiece. We spend millions of dollars destroying it through our Medicare system. And that's a real disaster in my view. We need to change that. We can move on from there because when we're talking about the wonder of human life, there are some people who've been through a circumstance where they recognise the reality of what John chapter 10 and verse 10 says, which says, Jesus said to his disciples, hey, I've come that you might have life. But before that he says, the thief comes to steal, kill and destroy. But he said, I've come that you might have life and have it to the full. But
There's a clear contrast.
Oh, absolute contrast.
Yes.
And when I read that on one occasion, I was reading through that and I thought, that's a very, very clear picture of abortion. Because you see, for a woman who is created to create life, and that's in the heart of a woman, she's there to create life.
Right.
What an amazing thing.
Yes.
And when she goes and has an abortion, which is taking the life of that little one that she's carrying, she's got to go against her very nature as a woman.
Right.
But something has to happen for that to occur.
Right.
That verse explains it.
Yes.
Steals. Satan steals the truth.
Right.
And that's the very thing he does. He says, oh, it's just a blob of cells, or it's just a nothing, it's just this, it's just that.
Right.
You don't need to worry.
Right.
And it's an amazing thing because when he steals the truth, we can do anything.
Right.
We can distort our mind to think a lie is a truth. And when that woman understands, or she thinks that, oh, it's just a blob, she goes and has the abortion.
Right.
In the end, it destroys that little baby.
Right.
It kills that little baby, and it destroys her.
Wow.
So we've got 3 points there in John chapter 10 and verse 10,
Yes.
where it says, Satan or the thief comes to steal, kill, and destroy.
That's right.
3 aspects
Yeah.
of the whole abortion decision, which is very sad. So I don't attack a woman who's been through that. There's
Sure.
a lot of reasons that we could talk about as to why she might do that.
Right.
Because Jesus gives the rider to all that.
Right.
No matter where they've been, no matter what's happened, he says, I've come that you might have life and have it to the full. He doesn't say, if you've done this, there's no chance for you.
Right.
He doesn't say that.
Yeah.
He says, if you've done this, there is still the opportunity for you to know the truth
Sure.
and to know life in all its abundance.
Yeah. So Jesus makes the difference.
Oh, absolutely.
And then you're carrying that message. That's your message.
And that's the message. That's embodied in the whole message that I'm taking there. It's not a message of condemnation,
So it's a message
but a
of
message
grace
of
and
hope.
hope.
And then we move on, and the other foundational scripture that I like to use is from Deuteronomy 30 and verse 19. Because Deuteronomy 30 and verse 19 tells us very clearly, as God's speaking to his people, and that we could say that's us,
Right.
if you like,
Sure.
and anyone who claims the name of Christ
Right.
and a relationship with God, we can say, as God said to his people, I've set before you life and death,
Right.
blessing and cursing. Isn't
Right.
it interesting that he puts life with blessing and death with cursing?
Yes. Yep.
Now, that can be an individual, it can be a nation, it can be a family, it can be whatever. But when we choose life, there's blessing. When we choose death, there's cursing.
Right.
But he also puts a very, very important point in there. He says, therefore, choose life. He doesn't say choose life or death.
Right.
You see, we understand the truth that we are fallen creatures. There's sin.
Right.
We don't have to choose death.
Right.
It's part of who we are.
Right. But choosing life is a decision.
That's right. We have
Yeah.
to make a deliberate choice to choose life.
So this really leads on to, we know what motivates you, and we've seen the background as far as the Wilberforces of the day. But now, what do you actually do based on what we've just heard? What do you actually go about doing?
I have two programs, basically. One, which I take to primary schools.
Right.
And that primary school program emphasises that first verse from Psalm 139. We're fearfully and wonderfully made.
Right.
What an amazing story to take to 11, 12-year-olds
Right.
who are coming to the end of primary school. They're moving into their teenage years, lots of changes happening. They're starting to think about who they are.
Right.
Isn't it wonderful to know that each one of them is made in the image of God? Each one of them has been created for a purpose.
Yep.
That's a tremendous message to take.
Yep.
And that's what I take into the primary schools. A lot of biology in there, talking about the development of the baby in the womb. I can show ultrasounds, I can show all those sorts of things, which we'll see in subsequent programs
Yep.
here.
Yep.
We can have all that sort of information. Visual things.
Yes.
They can see the reality of the little baby inside the womb.
Right.
And it's not any question, oh, is this a baby or not a baby? Look at it.
There's no question
reality.
about that.
It's
Yep.
there.
Yep.
The ultrasound, the models, everything.
Yep.
The secondary program moves a little bit further because, as we call choices of life, I like to give to the secondary students, and I'm talking grade 9, 10, 11, 12, so that's about a 15-year-old on,
Right.
information about, again, the development of the baby in the womb, in brief, but then moving into the whole issue of abortion. Not in graphic detail, but the reality of, well, is it just a woman's choice? That, you know, all these sorts of issues and things that the pro-choicers often like to throw.
Right.
And we're going to discuss those as
Yeah.
well. But then say, well, what really happens after a woman's had an abortion?
Right.
What sort of consequences might she experience that might be a real challenge in her life, both from a physical point of view and from a psychological point of view? Let's have a look. Present the information. And look, I just say to the students, I'm not here to tell you what to do.
Right.
If I can provide you with the information that makes it very clear, then you can make up your own mind. You can understand exactly what I'm saying. And I've seen some tremendous responses from students who suddenly switch on and see the reality.
Yeah.
of
Now
what
this
it's all
job
about.
is really far too big for one person to do.
Oh, I can't do it all.
I see. How do you plan to get the message across to all the schools?
I have a great difficulty because there's about 3,500 schools in New South Wales alone, let alone the rest of Australia.
Yes.
So to get to 3,500 schools, that's quite a number of schools each week.
Right.
I just couldn't manage it.
Right.
So what God is providing for me, and I believe it's a real blessing, are a number of people who have a great passion for the value of human life.
Right.
They have a tremendous passion. And all I need to do is harness that passion, give them some training as to how to present this message in the classroom,
Right.
or how to ring up the schools to make the appointments in the first place,
Right.
and draw together a team. And I'm looking for a team in every state of this nation.
Wow. Every state.
Every state.
Wow.
Because I believe that as we raise up a young generation, I've got some older ones. They're not all in their teens or 20s. I've got a number who haven't even left school yet, who are very keen.
Yes.
And so I'm providing them with opportunities to speak at our annual camp and those sorts of things.
Right. And we're going to see some of them today in the subsequent program where you will take the position here and you'll introduce our viewers to some of these young people.
That's correct. And I believe in the years to come,
Yes.
some of them will become the doctors, the nurses, the teachers and all those sorts of people. Can't you just see it that some of these people will, as they become members of parliament even,
Yes.
can you see them changing the legislation and saying, hey, we can't tolerate the abortion laws that have been there, we're going to change them.
Wow.
We're going to turn them into laws that protect life,
Right.
not destroy life.
Wow.
Can you imagine the blessing? according to Deuteronomy 30:19,
Wow.
that comes
Wow.
because a nation chooses life.
Wow.
And that's something that I look for, because I don't think William Wilberforce saw
Yes.
the freedom of those slaves happening in a particular point of time.
Right.
But he looked forward to it.
Right. He just continued on,
And
persisted.
It didn't matter how long
That's
it took,
right.
he was going to keep going.
Yeah. He was Mr. Perseverance.
And I want that sort of perseverance.
Yes.
I just want to be able to say, hey, I'm going to keep going.
Yes.
Because that's got to happen. And I want to get to the point where I start to see these young people becoming passionate and capable
Right.
of taking this message very strongly.
Well, Bruce, it's wonderful to hear your vision, and it's a wonderful vision. And folks, we really want to encourage you to support Bruce with his ministry and mission. In the last few minutes we have on today's program, and of course in the subsequent program, you're going to be introduced to your team. But just for now, why don't you address our viewers and just share with them what's on your heart and how to encourage them to join the Choices of Life.
I will, Peter. We live in a society, I believe, that has made abortion acceptable. Abortion is something that people think is just an easy choice. There's easy options. A young girl who finds herself pregnant, there's pressure to say, oh, you're too young, all those sorts of issues, and she is pushed in the direction of having an abortion, as if it's going to solve all her problems. In reality, as we'll talk about later, it really doesn't solve the problems at all. It creates other problems. But our society is trying to tell us that it's okay in every direction. I want to get this message even further. I can't do it, as we've already mentioned. Even the team that's growing around Choices of Life is not sufficient to take it as far as I would like to see it go. It's not having the impact. We need more people who can help us to take that message even further. If you have a passion for life, if you have any sort of skills that you feel could be used in ringing schools, in making contact with them, with youth groups or with churches, of going into classes and spreading this message even further, that's the sort of person I want to contact us at Choices of Life and say, I'd like to help, I'd like to be involved in some way or another. I admire William Wilberforce, as you've already heard. I saw what he did. I saw how he made not only something about slavery, he made it unacceptable in his society, but he did more than that. He made it unthinkable, because today, 200 years later, it's unacceptable. Even though it happens, our society says, hey, this is unacceptable. We can't accept this. We can't even think of it happening. And some people deny that it happens, I guess, in one sense, because they don't see it. But it does happen. But it's unthinkable. It's an unthinkable evil. I have a vision that one day abortion will be seen as an unthinkable evil. It will not just be something that's not done. It's not just something that people see as unacceptable, but our society will say it's unthinkable. And I guess my goal is this. It's to make abortion as unthinkable as slavery. That's where I want to go.
Thank you so much, Bruce. It is so passionate. I just love the passion and the way God laid it on your heart to have that particular vision to make abortion an unthinkable evil. Well, we want to thank you for being on Transform. As I mentioned earlier, I look forward to the next few programs where you actually introduce us to your team. And folks, it was just lovely to have Bruce Coleman with us, and we certainly want to encourage you to support the Choices of Life. And until next time with you, thank you for watching Transformed, and God bless you, and bye for now.